Okay, today we're going to replace the right lower control arm on the 2002 Toyota Camry LE. The new arm has been purchased right here, laying right here on the floor. This arm came with the ball joint also. Problem here, the bushing is bad. The rear bushing on this mount is bad. Okay, we're going to begin by jacking the car up, and then we're going to remove this dog bone mount. There's two screws, one here and one up here, that holds this mount in place. You will sometimes find a piece of wire connected across here, right? I believe it's a ground. If there is one, you need to move that because we will raise this engine up. Now, once we are done with the top, we're going to go down below. I will first show you everything that we need to loosen and take off. One, the axle nut, which is, I believe, a 24 millimeter 12-point socket, and the motor mount over here, which takes a 19 millimeter socket or wrench, and there's also two nuts underneath that hold, two nuts and bolts that hold the bottom part of the bracket in place. To get to those, you'll find two plastic caps on the frame. Looks like this. You need to plug them out, take them out of the way so you can access the nut and bolt. And also, I'm going to disconnect this link right here only from the top. This is the sway bar link. I will do that on the left side also, so that sway bar can be moved freely out of the way. Next, we'll disconnect the tie rod end and the ball joint nut, which is up underneath the strut. Also, we have to loosen the nut for the bolt that holds the bushing in place, the bushing on the sway bar in place. And then you have two nut and bolts here. The bolt goes down through the mount. Actually, no, that bolt goes down through and hold the front part of the control arm in place. There's one here and one on the other side of the, kind of underneath the front mount. Okay, before removing this axle nut, you need to take a punch, and this groove right here on the axle, drive that punch in there to lift up the locking tab that's on the nut. Once that is up, take your 24 millimeter socket with a breaker bar or air tool. I'm using my old faithful Chicago pneumatic. This gun is over 20 years old. Raise that nut out of the way. Then now, next, I'm going to take these off. I already loosened this. I'm going to leave these in there for the time being until I loosen the rest of the nuts that I have to loosen. And now with the 17 millimeter, I would get that nut off. put a wrench on the back of it, it'll stop it moving. Take this nut back on the sway bar, if I can get it out at this point, which I can't. Normally I'll just put the nut back on, so it makes it easier for when I'm reassembling. Okay, get yourself a pair of pliers or a pair of the pliers to take out the cotter pin, or using a cotter pin tool, extractor tool, or a small punch that you can get in the rounded end of it and pull that out. I'm about to remove the nut and bolt that holds the control arm in place. Over here, placing a wrench on top. And with my 17mm socket, and impact gun, I will loosen the bottom nut, bottom bolt. I'm sorry, this one takes a 19. Alright, put that out of the way. Leave the nut on top. That bolt can stay in place. And with the 17, I will go up to the front part to remove the nut from those two holes that had the plastic, plastic caps on them. With those two off now, this mount here, once I remove the top nut, that mount will be ready to come out. Please excuse the noise from the compressor. Now with your 17 socket, you can remove the nut for the tie rod end, and using a hammer, I prefer to leave the nut on. Once it's loose, I leave it on and I hit right here where the tie rod end goes in through that hole. If you give that a couple of real good whacks, it will loosen that up so it can pop right out. Then you remove the nut, pull it out, place the nut back on for easy access when you need it to go back on. Once that's done, you can really move around to working on taking the nut off the ball joint. Okay, with your ball joint disconnected and your two bolts that hold the spindle to your strut assembly removed, make sure you do not damage the wheel sensor wire or the brake line. I do this by tying the whole spindle assembly up to the strut. I use some bungee cords for that, or you can use wire or anything you wish. Now up in here is the motor mount. Right here. I've already loosened all the nuts that holds it in. simply take it out of place after jacking the engine up. And before you jack it up, remember the dog bone mount up top that you loosened earlier. Remove that dog bone mount, which looks like this. Remove the front mount that I just took off. And you should have access to the other two bolts that hold in the control arm. These two right here. Now using a breaker bar, should take, I believe, a 20 millimeter socket. I'm using a 7/8 right now on that. And also a ratchet piece that fits on the breaker bar. I get up in there and I loosen these two. This one here and the one in the back. Once they're loose, you can take them off and then take the bolt that goes through the bushing in the back, and this arm should come right out. Okay, in taking the arm out, you want to pay close attention to this piece right here. Make sure you put it back on the new control arm in the right position. Don't transfer it over to this side. Okay, in fact, make sure you keep it on the back side because the arm goes in this way. This is the front, this is the back where the bushing is bad, and where it mounts onto the frame, this piece needs to go on in the back. With both sides, with the other side of the sway bar link disconnected, you can move that sway bar up and down. That will take it out of your way when you're putting the control arm in. First, I line up the control arm in this fashion. Slide it in because it's easier to get the bolt in with this, putting it in this way. Then you can swing it around towards the front of the car. After you put the nut on, do not tighten it. Swing it around to the front of the car and line up the other two holes to the frame. Okay, if you have problem lining these two holes up, this one here and this one here up, use a punch or a big screwdriver and pry it to line up the back hole and then drop the back bolt in. Once that is in, it should make it a little easier to put the second one in place. Okay, now with the two screws tightened down for the control arm, I will now tighten the one in the back that goes through the bushing and replace this front mount and tighten them down. Okay, now you can, with the control arm in place, I haven't connected the ball joint in yet, but you can lower the engine, put in the dog bone mount, tighten that down, and then underneath, as you lower the engine, you can line this, the front mount up. Okay, so what I would do first, what I did first was line this up and then go up top and connect the dog bone mount. Now I'm going to tighten both mounts down and install the ball joint end of this and put the control and put the spindle, connect that back to the strut assembly. And after that, hook up the sway bar on both sides and then the tie rod end. Insert the axle, actually you have to insert the axle first into the back of the spindle, into the hub, before you connect the ball joint side. So we go in axle, ball joint, tie rod, assembly, and sway bar links. Tighten down the nut on the axle. Tighten down the nut on struts, the nut and bolts on the strut, the two that's up here, and then reconnect the brake line to the strut assembly. Okay, now we have everything in place and everything tightened down. All I have to do now is put the axle nut back on and tighten that down. Once that's tight, I have to use a chisel or a punch and knock that little tab right here down into the groove on the axle. Okay, all that's left now with this lockdown is to put the wheel on, hubcap, and we're done with the job.